Welcome back to another episode of Awakening Women's Wisdom, the podcast where we have conversations with women of diverse backgrounds about how they express conscious grace, which is thoughtfulness, kindness, and compassion in their daily life, and to hear some little tidbits of wisdom that they've learned along the way. I'm Rebecca.
Hi, and I'm Laurine. Welcome back to our little podcast. I'm excited to have this episode with you all today because this is a particularly lovely woman named Janice, and I'm not going to talk anymore. I'm going to send it back to you, Rebecca, so that we can introduce this beautiful, beautiful soul.
Thank you. Yes, this is Janice, and beautiful soul is certainly an appropriate description of this friend of mine. I met Janice. She was doing a medicine wheel practice for a community right before COVID. And then I didn't see her again until, I don't know, maybe 4 years later through another mutual friend of ours. Janice is just the epitome of sincere heart, joy. The warmth of her smile and the sparkle in her eyes is just evidence of the brightness that she brings to life and to those around her. So welcome, Janice.
Thank you. I really appreciate the invitation and this opportunity, both to share with you and also to get to know both of you better.
Oh, thank you. Yes. Well, I've given a little bit of an introduction for you, but I will let you share a little bit about yourself just to give our listeners a little frame of reference of who you are and where you come from in your perspective on life.
Oh, where to start? I think perhaps with just some basic attitudes toward life, and that is that I'm a very curious person. I'm interested in many, many things, and I consider myself a lifetime learner. And that learning extends in many different attitudes and many different avenues. I'm 87. I will be 88 on 4/4. So somehow that seems propitious that I turn 88 on 4/4 this year. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I thought that I would even live this long. And I certainly didn't think that my life would look the way it looks now when I was younger. I'm in some ways having more new experiences at a more rapid rate than when I was younger, which is certainly not what I expected. But a nutshell, I was born in Alabama, grew up there. First career, I was a teacher in public school and then in private school. And then I became a chiropractor. And simultaneously, as I was becoming a chiropractor, I was also becoming a ceremonialist. So I was studying with indigenous people while I was in chiropractic school, which was 79 through 82. And the studies with indigenous people has continued. So that's me in a nutshell.
Well, thank you so much. I'm delighting in hearing about as you said, your first career. I was a teacher in public school and then private school. And wandered into unexpected career paths as well. I love that you shared about your age, Janice, because this is one of the things I think is very special about you, having the perspective of 87 and now nearly 88 years of life. And so I'm going to begin asking you some questions around that. how do you stay grounded in who you are while you are expressing in such diverse dimensional worlds as like being a shaman? And maybe part of that is the same.
Well, one thing that I would say in a general invitation to all of the listeners, to you and all of the listeners, is a recommendation is that one adopt some practices. I will offer, say, maybe one or two today, but more than suggesting that someone would take the practices that I use, I would suggest that each listener find the practices that work for them. And whatever it is, as long as it's working, keep doing it. And if for some reason it feels it doesn't work, see if that practice needs to be altered in some way, or maybe let go of that practice and find something that does work. That being said, I do have some practices, some that I have done daily for over 50 years, and some that I've done daily more than 40 years, and there are still practices coming. One that I'd like to share is one that I learned maybe 20 to 30 years ago. And it's one of the first things that I do after I get up in the morning. There are a number of practices that I do before I open my eyes, and then there are others that I do after I get up. This is one that I do after I'm up, and that is a water blessing. So it was taught to me by Masaru Emoto, the Japanese scientist who worked with water and with microscopic photographs of the crystals.
Yes.
And there were a number of practices that he taught, but the one that he taught that stuck with me and that I've continued to do since the day I learned it from him is to take a glass of water, and I do this first thing in the morning, and I tend to use a clear glass and pour water in it, and then I'll tell you the way that he taught it to me, and then I'll tell you some variations that I use of it. So the way he taught it was hands in a prayer position in front of the water, and then say to the water, "Water, I love you. Water, I thank you. Water, I respect you." And then say, still facing the water, you're saying this into the water that you're about to drink, your name. So, Janice, I love you. Janice, I thank you. Janice, I respect you. So that's the base practice that he taught. And I have embellished it, which I tend to do with practices.
I do too.
And so I always began it the way that he taught. But then one embellishment is with each thing that I add is after I say the three things that he recommended, I say, "Water, I have reverence for you." And then I say, "Janice, I have reverence for you." And then after that, I will add things like what I will often add is excellent health and well-being. I love you. I thank you. I respect you. I have reverence for you. And then other things are usually added almost every morning. So that is a practice that, if it resonates with you listeners, that you might at least try it and see how you like it. one of the things that I've done, just because I am a curious person, is sometimes I'll pour the water and have just a little sip of it, and then I will say the blessing and drink the water, and it feels different in my mouth. I don't know how else to explain it, but it does seem to create some change in the water itself. And the other thing that I do with it is, when I'm home, I'm not home all day, every day, but the days that I'm home, I leave some of the water in the glass, and then I sometimes put a cap or something over it. And throughout the day, as I drink water from that glass, I keep adding water in the glass, but there's always been some water left that was blessed, because I believe, and so did Miss Oramoto believe, that water informs water.
Yes.
So the blessing, even if it's in a small amount of the water and I keep adding to it, it isn't necessary for me to keep doing the blessing over and over again, although one could. The blessing that's already in the water informs the water that's added to the glass.
Yes.
Oh, I love that.
So,
Love that.
so that's one daily practice. And as I said, that's one that I've been doing maybe 20 to 30 years every day. Another one that is actually more recent is one from the Heart Math Institute. And
good.
if any of the listeners are unfamiliar with it, it's really easy to find them. You can simply search Heart Math Institute online, and you can learn a lot more about their research and about practices that they're recommended. But they have a simple base practice that I would like to share with the listeners today. And I would encourage those of you who are listening and in the podcast audience to actually do this with me. Don't just listen to me talking about it. Have the experience. So if you just start paying attention to your breath, just notice it. Just notice your breath. And as you notice your breath, it automatically calls you to yourself, to your body's own rhythm. Just pay attention to your breath. And as you're paying attention to your breath, you might want to put one or even both of your hands in the area of your heart. So now your hands are feeling your breath that causes your chest to rise and fall, bringing you home to yourself. And in this experience of being with your breath, bring to mind someone, something, or someplace that just brings a smile to your face every time you think about that person, that place, that thing. Just lights you up, makes you happy, brings you joy. And simultaneously, hold that feeling of joy, that feeling of happiness, bliss, as you breathe. There are many scientists within the Institute, within Heart Math Institute, who recommend that we do this multiple times a day. And it doesn't have to be for a long period. Greg Braden suggests that 3 minutes of this practice creates up to 6 hours of benefit in our biochemical body and our neurological body and our physical body and our autonomic nervous system. So when you think of the investment of 3 minutes equals 6 hours of benefit, it's really worth it to do it. And this is not necessarily something that I do, say, first thing in the morning or any particular time of day, but it is something that I do typically more than once a day. And sometimes I will use it if I'm feeling scattered or if I have something that requires focus, do it before that activity to bring myself to myself and in an awareness that my physical systems are humming at a higher resonance.
Nice. Yes.
That's beautiful. Very beautiful. Thank you, Janice. I have a question for you, please.
Well, yes.
If
Yes.
you're ready for it. You've lived a beautiful life and obviously very full, and you are a curious person, so I'm sure you've sought wisdom as beautifully as you share wisdom. I'm wondering how have you experienced your life, or your more specific, your inner strength differently now than when you did earlier in your life?
When I think of strength now, an excellent question. I do. I think of it. I experience it differently than when I was younger, and in different ways. Um, and it's interesting that you asked that question. I am, in some ways, I am physically stronger at 87 than I was when I was younger. And so there's the physical part of it. And that seems to have happened for me relatively organically. It wasn't as if I decided that I was going to be stronger in my 80s than I was in my 50s. It just seemed to activities and other things seem to come to me for reasons other than me making a conscious decision to have it happen that way.
Right.
One of them was I actually was not. I did dance when I was younger, in my 20s and 30s mostly. Did some performing, and then I studied creative movement, and I studied all the way up to postgraduate work at UCLA. I studied dance therapy. So
Wow.
I was active in that way, but I was never really active athletically in sports until I was in my, well, I was 69 when when the first impulse came, and it wasn't about me, or I didn't think of it as being about me. What happened is when I was 60, 68, 69, I lost some friends who died from strokes. And then I had some other friends, like several, fairly close together, who had strokes, and it didn't kill them, but it changed their lives forever. And so I decided to work with the American Heart Association and help raise money to prevent strokes by walking a half marathon. And I had never done anything like that before. I wasn't even much of a walker at the time. And so I trained with the American Heart Association and for about 7 months. And then I walked 13.1 miles and raised money for the Heart Association
Nice.
in San Francisco.
Cool.
And it put me on a path that I did Big Sur the next year when I was 70. And then now I do usually at least one a year. I do a 10K, and I'm registered for one in April, the Great Race in Agora. So
Nice.
it made a walker out of me, but that I wasn't. And because I walk, I think I've attracted a lot of friends, most of them quite a bit younger than I am, who like to walk, and so I walk with them. In September, they're a group of friends that I camp with. In September, we walked across Catalina Island, 8.8 miles from the dock to the campsite.
Yes.
So I would not be able to have those experiences if it hadn't come about, as I said, and I didn't think of it as being something I was doing for myself when it originated. And it has been for myself, paying off ever since.
Isn't that beautiful how that works?
That's
and for
amazing.
anybody who doesn't know, Catalina is not, the 8 miles is not flat.
Exactly.
It has a lot of elevation changes. It's quite an island. So I'm championing you for doing that already.
It was a challenge. We're planning to go back in September, and we're not going to do it that way. There's an option of taking a second boat and only walking 2 miles, and that's what we're going to do in September 20. The other thing, still on the line of physical strength, another thing that I did, and it also came about organically, not by a conscious decision on my part, or I wasn't aware of having a conscious decision about it, is in October of 2025, I began for the first time pumping iron. I am working out with a trainer in a gym, and I had never, ever even thought I would even want to do that. But the way it happened is I have a friend who's overweight in program, working with her doctor, working with her sponsor, and the sponsor and the doctor kept saying, you need to walk. And she would say, yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, yeah, good idea. But she wasn't walking. And so for her birthday last year, she said, I know what I want for my birthday, because she knows me as a walker. She knows me other ways too, but she said, I want you to walk me. That's what I want for my birthday. And I said, you got it. It's your birthday present. And so we've been walking for a year. This year, October, birthday comes around again. I said, you want the same present? She said, yes, and.
Yes, and. There you go.
I said, what's your and? She says, we have free gym membership. I said, oh, yeah, I know. We got gym membership. I don't like gyms. They don't smell good. They don't feel good. She said, well, why don't we just go activate our gym memberships? I said, oh, okay. So she says, why don't we do it today?
Can't let this yes
really
and slip away.
Really? She said, yeah, there's one right down the street from you. Let's just go to that one. So we did. There was some red tape and paperwork with the insurance company we had to get through, but we got back. We got that done, got back. So I went we tried to that day sign up, but we were told we had to check with our insurance company and get some things straightened out. So we did that. Then I went back a few days later, and the sales manager of the gym says, "And do you want to work with a trainer?" And I said, "Well, I think I better." I haven't a clue how to use any of those machines or even how to lift weights.
There's this wisdom coming through.
And so the person who would take us on tour the first day, it was his last day at that gym because he'd been promoted and he was going to have a higher position at another gym. So he gave us a super duper tour. And as a part of the tour, he purposely introduced us to several trainers. And there was one in particular that when he looked at me, I felt as though he was looking at my soul, not anything else. And so when the sales manager started naming off some of the trainers, she said, "Which one do you want?" And I said, "I want that one." Her eyes glistened, her voice softened. She said to me, "You just made a very wise decision." Turns out one of his specialties is working with older people. And it's been an incredible experience. I've been working out twice a week, pump and iron, since October. First time in my life.
That's awesome.
I'm so grateful that we asked you this question.
So that's a little bit about physical strength. But when I hear the question, I also think about other ways that I experience strength. And again, thinking not so much about myself, but when I think of other women and I think that's a strong woman, I don't usually think in terms of their physical strength. I think, whereas when I was younger, if I had said that, maybe I would have thought of using the word in that way. But for instance, I have a friend who's 95. Now, she's not the strongest physically, although she's still walking and getting about. But when I think of her as a very strong woman. And she models that kind of strength for me. And part of it has to do with pretty much most of her life. She's been an activist for ecology. And so I look at strength now as the strength to stand up and to speak out when something needs to be said. And we can think of that on a larger level, like ecology of the planet, or we could even think of it in terms of personal relationships. Sometimes there are things that need to be said to a family member or a friend.
That's true.
And one can either have the strength, the courage, the willingness to say what needs to be said or not. And I also see the flip side of that. And that is, there's sometimes that we may want to say something to a family member or friend that's really best left unsaid. It's best if that be said to our therapist or to our coach, or we write it on a piece of paper and burn it.
Burn it, sure.
Rather than to saying it to mother, father, son, daughter, lover, husband, colleague, friend. So the strength and the courage to stay silent when, or to find something else to say other than what is wanting to come out of your mouth that would possibly hurt the person rather than help them.
Help a situation, yeah. Well, Janice, this time with you has really flown, and I'm so, so grateful for all of the incredible things that you have shared, your journey, your surprises of pumping iron and things like that, but you've just been an incredible inspiration in what you've shared from your heart, from your life experiences. And we're so grateful to have had this opportunity to spend some time with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Jan.
you. Thank
All right.
you.
Absolutely brilliant talking to you. Thank you for sharing your wisdom.
You're welcome.
All right. Well, thank you. And goodbye. And we'll see you on the next one.
All right.